Ladies and gentlemen, would you please be upstanding for the arrival of His Excellency, the President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, and he's accompanied by our statesmen, our former African presidents, as accompany him in. Ladies, are we ready? A very warm welcome. We'll remain upstanding, ladies and gentlemen, and allow them to take their positions and take their seats. A very warm welcome, Your Excellency. We're glad to have you with us. Thank you. You may take your, yes, and if you take your seats, sir, we shall also take our seats. And may I ask,
Excellencies, colleagues, former heads of state and government, Mr. Claver Gatete, Under Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Commission Economic Commission for Africa, Honorable Prime Ministers, Ministers, President, Excellencies, Ambassadors, heads of international organizations, and members of the African diplomatic community, distinguished leaders from the African business community, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me, Your Excellency, on behalf of the former African heads of state and government and all participants to the 8th African Leadership Forum, to most sincerely thank you for three things. First, that we thank Your Excellency and your esteemed government and the people of Uganda for the very warm reception and gracious hospitality accorded to us since our arrival in this beautiful and historic city of Kampala. We have been received cordially, and we are being taken care of very well. We are enjoying the generous hospitality of the Ugandan people. This is something we are used to and would not expect anything less. Second, that we thank you for agreeing Uganda to be the host of this year's Africa Leadership Forum. And third, that we thank you for allocating time out of your very busy schedule to come in person to grace this meeting. Some of us understand when you are the head of state, you hardly fall short of affairs to attend to. Your presence here means a lot to us. It demonstrates the importance you attach not only to the ideals of this forum, but also to the realization of sustainable development goals in Africa and Africa's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Your Excellency, my job this afternoon is simple. Just to welcome you to address this auspicious gathering. But before I do so, please allow me to say a few words about the African Leadership Forum. This is a forum that was established in 2014 with the aim of bringing together current and former African leaders to exchange views and insights on the continent's most pressing challenges. Over the years, the forum has established itself as a unique and inclusive platform that brings together current and former leaders from both the public and the private sectors to exchange experiences, foster dialogue, and identify sustainable solutions to Africa's pressing socio-economic challenges. The idea of this forum was born in 2013 in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, during a symposium on shared societies, inclusive sustainable development that was jointly organized by the World Leadership Alliance, Club de Madrid, and the Uongozi Institute. It was during this gathering that three visionary leaders, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of Nigeria, His Excellency Festus Mogae, former President of Botswana, and His Excellency Benjamin Mkapa, former President of Tanzania, now late, recognized the need for an African-led forum that interrogates, analyzes, and articulates African perspectives. Thus, the African Leadership Forum was born with President Mkapa serving as his founding patron and the Uongozi Institute as its secretariat. After President Mkapa passed on in 2020, I took over the baton, and since 2022, I have been steering the affairs of this forum as the patron. Since its inception, the African Leadership Forum has played an important role in fostering candid conversation on opportunities, challenges, and solutions for Africa's socio-economic needs and problems. The forum has also been discussing global developments and how they impact the advancement of the African continent. To date, the forum has had 7 meetings and has covered 6 broad thematic areas as follows. The inaugural meeting was held in Dar es Salaam in 2014 and discussed the challenges of Africa's transformation. The second was held in Dar es Salaam again in 2015, and the theme was Moving Towards an Integrated Africa, What Needs to be Done. The third meeting was again held in Dar es Salaam in 2016 and discussed enabling African business to transform the continent. The fourth meeting was held in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2017 and deliberated on peace and security for an integrated, united, and sustainable Africa. The fifth meeting was held in Kigali, Rwanda in 2018 and was themed Financing Africa's Transformation for Sustainable Development. The sixth meeting was again held in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 2019 with the theme of promoting good natural resource management for socio-economic transformation in Africa. And the seventh and most recent meeting was held in Accra, Ghana in 2023 with the theme of promoting intra-African trade to unlock Africa's agricultural potential. Your Excellency, today you will have the honor of inaugurating the 8th edition of the African Leadership Forum under the theme Realizing Sustainable Development Goals in Africa, Progress and Way Forward. However, before I proceed, please permit me, Your Excellency, to take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of our dear brothers, colleagues, and former heads of state and government who have joined us today, starting with Honorable Mohamed Monsef Marzouk, former President of the Republic of Tunisia, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, and the Right Honorable Haile Mariam Desalegn, the former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Excellencies, thank you for traveling all the way to join us today. Your Excellency, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn is serving as one of the co-conveners of this year's forum. After participating at the 7th ALF Forum meeting in Accra, Ghana, we kindly requested him and he agreed to take on this role. We have worked very closely with his office and his Haile Mariam and Roman Foundation to make this event a success. In the same vein, also allow me to recognize and thank Dr. Antonio Pedro, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, for the pivotal role he personally and his esteemed organization played in making it possible for this meeting to be held here in Kampala. First, we thank him for agreeing to also be one of the co-conveners of the forum. And second, for agreeing the UNECA to work with Ongos Institute in organizing the forum. Your Excellency, allow me now briefly mention the core expected objectives of this year's forum. First, to review the current status of SDG implementation across the African continent. Second, to identify key challenges and bottlenecks hindering progress. Third, to promote regional cooperation and knowledge sharing among African countries. And fourth, to develop innovative solutions and strategic partnerships for accelerated progress. Your Excellency, the selected theme for the ALF 2025 is timely because it provides the opportunities for Africa to celebrate our achievements in realizing the SDGs and remind ourselves of the bottlenecks and therefore chart out the way forward. It also avails us the opportunity to chart out the way forward. Despite the continuous claim that SDGs are too ambitious, it has been independently demonstrated that the African continent has made significant progress to date. African countries, African economies have continued to prosper in the process, reducing poverty, improving health outcomes, expanding education, and taking action on climate change. These gains are a testament to our dear continent's leadership and the resilience of its people. We, of course, acknowledge that more needs to be done. Most of our countries still grapple with the challenges of abject poverty, inequality, youth unemployment, effects of climate change and conflict, just to mention a few. This is something we should not take lightly, especially now that we are left with only 5 years to achieving the 2030 goals. Therefore, the importance of urgent and transformative action can never be overstated. Your Excellency, we expect that the African Leadership Forum 2025 will serve as a turning point by calling for bold, practical solutions and renewed commitment to accelerating SDG progress across the continent. We look forward to bold, forward-looking solutions and practical evidence-based recommendations that can be implemented across our countries. But more importantly, we anticipate a renewed sense of urgency and commitment from all stakeholders to accelerate the pace of progress on SDGs. The outcome of this forum must go beyond declarations. It must inspire decisive, coordinated, and sustained action that will drive real transformation on the ground. Your Excellency, earlier this morning during my remarks in the morning session, I assured delegates that the discussions over the next 2 days will be held in a spirit of openness and trust. To facilitate this, all deliberations following the plenary will be conducted under the Chatham House rules. This will enable our participants to engage candidly, share insights freely, and exchange ideas constructively, knowing that their views will be respected and confidentially maintained. It is through such honest and open dialogue that we can arrive at meaningful solutions for the continent's most pressing challenges. With these many words, Your Excellency, it is now my great honor and pleasure to invite you to address this esteemed audience, which eagerly awaits to hear from your custom insights and the words of wisdom as always. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Sit down, sit down. Their Excellencies, the former heads of state, I don't know whether you know them. His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, the one who was speaking, former President of Tanzania. His Excellency Desalegn, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia. His Excellency Koroma, former President of Sierra Leone. His Excellency Mazuki, former President of Tunisia. You know where Tunisia is? Many of you don't even know. It is near Libya. They know Libya more than Tunisia. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, the Right Honorable former Prime Ministers, the former Vice President, Professor Gilbert Bukenya, and all the dignitaries here. The theme is sustainable development in Africa. And we have been engaged with this issue since independence. Our political movement, which started as a student movement, had time to study and sort out our thinking, because thinking is quite confusing. Now, in the last 60 plus years, as a student movement, as a fighting force, liberation movement, and as a political party in government, we have identified what we called strategic bottlenecks that block socio-economic transformation in Africa. At one time, we even had a problem with these terms, sustainable development. Our question was, how can you sustainably remain an infant, remain the same organism? That's why we insisted on introducing in another word, socio-economic transformation. Not only development quantitatively, but qualitative jump. This is what happens in nature. A baby is born, grows quantitatively as a baby, a child, but at some stage, he must undergo transformation. When he or she becomes a teenager, certain changes take place in that person. Goes from childhood to teenage and adulthood. This is what happened in Europe. Europe had to undergo socio-economic metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a process that is normally in biology among the insects, where the organisms undergo different forms. Take the butterfly. Butterfly starts as an egg, becomes a caterpillar, becomes a pupa, and becomes a mature butterfly. This is what happened in Europe. It's a pity that in the universities, they don't teach the political economy, which we are studying at the University of Dar es Salaam, which helped us so much. The laws that govern the evolution of society. If you look at Europe, in 1400, it was a three-class society. You had the feudalists, you had the farmers, the peasants, you had the artisans. By the time of the French Revolution, European society had metamorphosed into a four-class society. That is, the feudalists were still there, but a new class had emerged which never existed in human history. This was the middle class. The people who made a living between the difference between the cost of inputs and the final product. What we call profit. Now this class was called the middle class. We, the more ideological, were calling them the bourgeoisie. This was a new social class. It had never existed in human history. They were making a living on profits, while the landlords were making a living on rent, the feudalists. But the middle class came with another class that never existed much in human history. These were the working class, the proletariat. That's what they were calling them. How were they living? They were living on wages, on salaries. They had nothing else to support them except the sale of their labor. And then the peasants were still there. If you go to Europe now, you will no longer find the feudalists, they are no longer there. You will no longer find the peasants, they are no longer there. You now have the middle class and the skilled working class. So here, when we talk of sustainable development, does it include transformation of the society? If you have a peasant producing another peasant, and you go to the villages, you find 3 generations of peasants, grandfather, father, grandchild, they are all there. This is very dangerous. So therefore, I would really appeal to the thinkers to also emphasize this issue of qualitative jump of the society. And in order to assist this qualitative jump, we identified a number of bottlenecks that were blocking it. Bottleneck number 1, in the case of Africa, before independence, we had a problem of no freedom, lack of decision to make, of power to make our own decisions. So that would have been bottleneck number 1 before independence. But after independence, in many countries, when you hear this chaos in many parts of Africa, it is on account of a weak state. A state without the pillars to support it. Without an army, without a political structure of organized politics, because you cannot have an army without a historic mission. All armies have a historic mission. The British Army was called the Imperial Army. Their mission was to conquer backward people and exploit them. That's why the head of the British Army was called CGIS, the Chief of the General Imperial Staff, an army of empire to conquer other people. That was their mission. And they were not hiding it. Now, the American army, you remember how it started. The American settlers rebelled against the British king and poured his tea in the ocean, Boston Tea Party. And their slogan was no taxation without representation. In other words, they were making middle-class demands of democracy. So they had a political movement, a movement for democracy, political. But that political movement needed an army to defend it. That's how you get the army of George Washington, the Continental Army. So the army of the Americans is to defend capitalism. The Red Army is an army of peasants and workers to defend the interests of those people. What are the African armies for? This is the problem